don't just believe it. But I went and looked it up, as you know, a couple months ago. I'm sure you saw it, where the head of their parliamentary section on intelligence said, we're going to attack Tel Aviv and New York if you attack us. That's a pretty reckless statement by Iran. I want to ask you about that when we get back, because they've been, I mean, as you know, pretty much just in proxy wars in the region. Why would they say that? Or was that guy speaking out of turn? What does it mean that Ahmadinejad is now losing political power in the parliament and maybe out soon? I want to discuss where you see this going, what the inside baseball is there at the Pentagon with Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer after this quick break. Please stay with us.
We're on the
No more Mr. Nice Guy. Okay, looking at this, we know there's been a covert war against Iran with proxy groups for at least 5 years because Bush put a policy statement out on it. It's intensified in the last year. They've been arresting U.S. citizens and others and putting them on trial to be executed who they think are spies. Iran's got its proxy groups, Hezbollah, attacking Israel. Most of the Israeli advisors, for those that weren't aware of this, the former head of Mossad and others are saying, do not attack Iran. That'll dig them in with the population that they're unpopular with now. Iran's going to attack Israel on all sides. What is the inside baseball, Colonel, on a hot war with Iran? It looks like a lot of forces are building up in the region. What are you hearing right now on this front, and how does Syria tie in? How does Russia getting more hardline? How does Pakistan? How does China? Because it looks like the battle lines are being drawn.
The Chinese and Russians have been strong advocates of both Syria and Iran for a while. And let's be brutally honest here, a lot of the technology we're worried about has come from the Chinese and Russians and some from the North Koreans. So the fact that it is cooperation, we know. The question becomes, what will come of that cooperation? And let's go to the whole idea of the Iranian government and the upcoming elections. And let me be very clear on this. The Iranians, as you know, are, I don't know if people understand, they're not monolithic. They don't have a single group who actually knows what they want to do. You have people who are as rational as you and I, who are at the top of the government. At the same time, you have these radicals who believe in the 12th Imam and the whole idea that by creating chaos, they will have this religious figure reappear. So some of those folks are that radically committed to a radical course of action. But as you know, Ahmadinejad is coming up for re-election. Those elements within the government, those conservative mullahs don't like him. And so I think you're going to see a lot of things playing out. So what we need to do, Alex, frankly, to kind of cut to the chase is do everything we can to create chaos within their own ranks. Anything we can do to actually encourage democracy, encourage those groups who are for reform, who want democracy, we should do everything we can to encourage them and create their own level of chaos within the government. And let's remember, they're Persians, they're not Arabs, and they have a very proud culture who are very proud of what they accomplished over, the past 2,000 years. So we've got to look at that and use it to our advantage. With that said, they have developed a new class of nuclear weapons. There's articles out today indicating that the North Koreans have probably been paid to actually conduct deep underground nuclear research and weapon attempt basically using nuclear weapon actual warheads, exploding underground. So I think the Iranians are further ahead than what General Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, cares to admit.
All right, let me ask you this question, because I've got family and other sources years ago, like 2 years ago, saying Iran has primitive nuclear weapons but not delivery systems. But then is that internal Pentagon propaganda? I mean, I know you have a high security clearance.
I agree. No. I do. I'm one of the proponents that says that they have at least two weapons. They have no way to deliver them. And the basis for this, and you again, I would encourage your audience to go do their own due diligence. Look at what the French and Germans are reporting. There's been some reports out recently by some foreign countries other than ours who are saying, look, there's clear evidence that the North Koreans have been cooperating with the Iranians on development of nuclear systems. The question becomes, obviously, is putting it on the warhead. The last overt North Korean blast, which occurred a couple of years ago, was a very small magnitude. Everybody's saying, it was a fizzle. No. What they were going for is miniaturization, Alex. What they're trying to do, both sides, the North Koreans and Iranians, are trying to miniaturize so they can put these things on delivery systems. So I agree with you that I think they're working right now to put these things on delivery systems, which will allow them to throw these nuclear weapons outside of their border. Right now, they cannot deliver them using modern technology. But again, simply having it does not mean that the intent to use it is there. And that's where I think the question.
Well, let me go to this place then. What about Pakistan? Because I see that as a greater threat to everybody, that they're very unstable and have over 100 nukes and medium-range delivery systems, as you know. That's on record. They're very technologically advanced, and everything I see the Pentagon doing is further destabilizing. And I can see you saying, well, destabilize Iran so they can get, more moderates in power. But then what about Pakistan? I mean, aren't these policies actually pushing Pakistan into the arms of China?
Well, I think that we have to you quote President Bush, we've misunderestimated the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis for this entire war, Alex, have been on one side, the Pakistani side, and yet we pretended otherwise. So by the things we've done, I think have had the unintentional. I don't believe we've intentionally sought out to destabilize the Pakistanis for the very reasons you mentioned. We know they have nuclear weapons. We know they have nuclear delivery systems. But I think the unintended consequence of us forcing them to do things against their best interests, which is essentially to say, we force them to take and do something against the Taliban. The Taliban are their own creation, Alex. We're trying to get them to do things which they don't want to do. And by doing that, we've created this other element of the Taliban within Pakistan who is now working to destabilize them. So we've helped create the chaos within their system by asking them to do things against their own interest. That is a Pakistani interest. And plus you have the Indians. So we've allowed the Indians to do a great number of things in Afghanistan. By doing that, we've then further destabilized the situation. This is a situation where we should have asked Indians to just sit it out. We don't need you there because your presence there will help destabilize things.
Well, no kidding. That's the ancestral enemy they've had all these wars with. It's crazy. I mean, come on. The Pentagon, the CIA, they've got to know that bringing the Indians in was going to turn the Pakistanis against them.
They did, and that's why you've seen the Haqqani network be so effective in retaining its ability to launch operations within Kabul and other parts of Afghanistan. And the Pakistanis are never going to give it up. So again, Alex, we've helped create and ferment the destabilization path of Pakistan by our own ham-handed way we've handled it. And this is one of those things the Pentagon, General McChrystal even said this recently in London, that we barely have a surface understanding of the cultures with which we're dealing. And so when you have policymakers with authority, with no knowledge of the culture, what you're seeing the inevitable result of this ham-handed, half-baked policy of dealing with the Pakistanis in such a way that we've destabilized the situation.
No kidding. All right, what is the inside baseball on an Iran attack? Because it looks like Obama's playing this whole peacenik angle publicly that he doesn't want war, but now after meeting with Netanyahu, he says we will take action. But from everything I've seen, it is a strategy of tension, balkanization, order out of chaos. At many levels, I don't think it's ham-fisted. Sure, mid-level, some of the bureaucrats. I mean, this larger strategy looks like it's an attempt to bring the world into turmoil so that there can be distractions from the bank looting and the rest of it. But what are you hearing on an Iran attack?
Well, they're split. I mean, clearly, let's just look at the facts here. One of the key facts, Alex, is that it would take over 300 sorties, that is 300 air missions, to just hit the known nuclear facilities, the known nuclear, and obviously we know that the Iranians have secret nuclear programs. So you've got to look at that realistically. So we have folks clearly who think we could do it. We have the military capacity. Obviously I don't think the Israelis could do it without us for any number of reasons, and I think that's the big debate right now. Do we go in with them or not? Do the Israelis want to attack? There's no doubt they do. The question becomes, can they and will they? Ultimately, the other thing we have to look at here is that the Jericho 3, the Israelis' delivery system is nuclear capable. The Israelis do have nuclear weapons, and if push came to shove, obviously they do have the ability to launch nuclear weapons. Obviously, that would be something that would put the whole region in turmoil. But we don't want that. No one wants that. So the question becomes, what is the middle course which would help stabilize things and back everybody off? And that, I think, has to be one where we look at other, I'm not a proponent of the negotiation. I think it's a day late, $1 short. At the same time, I don't think we can afford to do a full-on military attack only. So there's some middle ground, and that middle ground would be the dark arts. We've got to look at how we can actually do things without actually attacking. One general I've talked to several times, Alex, about this, former Central Command commander, has said the moment a ship gets scratched going through the Straits of Hormuz by miscalculation, we're talking about $6 to $7 a gallon oil. And I think that's realistic. So, I don't think the Obama administration really wants that level of expense to interfere with.
Well, just the saber rattling's got gas prices exploding.
At the $5 or more soon. Yes, absolutely. So, again, I don't think it's in the administration's best interest to see that, because that will definitely hurt his re-election campaign potential. So I think, if nothing else, they're going to try to keep a lid on this until after the election. So I see the administration trying to keep this patted down until we're past November, because obviously their big objective right now is to keep oil prices not going too high, even though ultimately they want them high, but low enough that they get through the election and get reelected. And I think obviously...
Okay, so after the election, instead of an October surprise, because if they did it close enough to that, even if gas prices went up, people tend to line up and rally around a president, period, when we're in a big war. Let me expand on this. How do you expect, and what are your colleagues saying? What's the consensus, if there is one, on the Russians? Putin's been reelected. If you believe that, their stocks have gone up. That means the hardliners are in. You've got the Chinese president saying prepare for war with the U.S. You've got the Pentagon acting like the Middle East isn't even an issue and sending all these fleets and troops to the Pacific. Why is there this realignment against Russia and China right now?
Well, first problem we have, just so I can define it for your audience to understand, we have no grand strategy. We have no idea what we're doing globally. We don't. And one of the things that even during the Cold War, Alex, we kind of had a strategy of how we're going to do things. We don't have that. No one has sat down and figured out how we're going to do things. All they know is we're going to cut the budget. With that said, then, we've left the door open for chaos. You have General Clapper saying one thing in testimony about the Muslim Brotherhood not being a threat, being one thing and another. At the same time, you've got the military expansion in the Pacific. So again, I think it's almost like there's nobody really thinking things through. What is the second? We're playing checkers, not chess. So what we need to do now as a country is really force the administration, whoever's in power, trying to figure out what are we actually trying to do with our multi-billion-dollar military.
Well, that's my next question. That's what I see, is you've got all these special interests who all want different things.
Right.
And so it's like America's become this robot that's getting all these different orders and smoke's coming out of its ears. And so even though we've had a corrupt elite and problems in this country before, now I'm really starting to agree with you. And I didn't think this just a few years ago. I don't think the elites can get their act together, as bad as they are. It's crazy. They've got all these weapons, all these systems. They've got level 4 bioweapons development. They're putting in level 2 facilities. I mean, they're crazy. They don't know what they're doing. Congress is insider trading, mistresses partying. We've had corrupt elites, but at least they were professional in the past. I think we are getting a bunch of moron, power-tripping, hubris-filled playboys, and that spells disaster. I mean, that spells war. That's because, man, I just have a bad feeling. I mean, I integrate all the info together, and my gut tells me we are cruising towards calamity.
I agree with you, and I think that's the problem here, Alex. We got to get our act together, because you have, like you said, you have huge economic interest in the Pentagon. One of the reasons we're bogged down in Afghanistan is we know the issue is Pakistan. We know that. One of the reasons we're bogged down is because you have something called, my friend, and you probably know him, Jerry Doyle,